a startling rumor that claimed a DNA test had shown a treachery involving Yandy Smith and that Mendeecees Harris was finally forced to face an unexpected truth sent the internet into utter astonishment, with headlines implying that a DNA test altered everything Yandy and Mendeecees had created together. What had begun as quiet murmurs in fan groups swiftly turned into a viral maelstrom. Fans who had previously applauded their devotion, fortitude, and capacity to endure chaos together were now wondering if that base was ever as strong as it seemed. As soon as the term betrayal started to trend alongside Yandy's name, the internet was divided between skepticism and disbelief. Online rumors claim that the purported DNA test involved more than just biology. It represented years of unresolved questions, honesty, and trust. Fans started going back to previous episodes, debates, and tense situations that seemed inexplicable. Suddenly seeing things in a different light, people began speculating about whether Yandy had been hiding a secret she never meant to share, and perhaps Mendeecees had been harboring concerns for longer than anyone knew, after everything they had already endured. Viewers who thought their relationship was based on transparency were shaken by the notion that a test could reveal something secret. The assertion that Mendeecees didn't remain silent this time added to the tension. According to rumors, he eventually voiced his opinions after being taken aback and embarrassed by the implications of the findings. Supporters claim that his response, whether controlled or emotional, showed a man realizing that trust is almost impossible to rebuild once it has been betrayed. Yandy's energy apparently changed online in the meanwhile. Her guarded demeanor, which only encouraged more conjecture, took the place of her typical assurance. Others contended that DNA tests don't lie, even when humans do, while supporters hurried to defend her, claiming rumors lacked evidence. The room's loudest sound was silence once more. Both sides took their time verifying information, which gave room for creativity. Some supporters think the issue is overblown and is just another attempt by the internet to discredit a powerful woman. Some believe there is too much smoke for there to be no fire at all. Everyone agrees that if a DNA test actually forced this discussion, it would be a turning point that goes much beyond previous disputes or rumors. The question that now looms over everything is straightforward but deadly. Can this relationship endure if proof really broke trust? Or did everything ultimately fall apart at this point? Fans claim that you need to consider the lengthy path that led to this in order to comprehend why this purported DNA test rumor shocked people so much. Mendeecees Harris and Yandy Smith did not establish their connection in a peaceful setting. Public scrutiny, legal disputes, protracted separations, and constant criticism from viewers who questioned everything from commitment to motivations shaped their story. Yandy became the face of dedication while Mendeecees was imprisoned, managing business, family obligations, and public opinion all at once. Fans saw her frequently, and as time went on, their devotion to her started to define how people perceived her. Because of this, the concept of treachery seemed to completely contradict the narrative that many people held, especially when it was connected to something as definitive as a DNA test. Online rumors claimed that the purported test involved more than just shock value. It brought up issues that some fans think were never completely resolved. Over the years, there have been instances on television where trust appeared strained, disagreements felt unresolved, discussions that lacked clarity, and facial expressions that suggested worries that neither party wanted to publicly express. Assuming the pair had already suffered worse, the majority of viewers ignored those instances. However, some started reinterpreting earlier situations when rumors of a DNA test emerged, wondering if unresolved tension had been simmering beneath the surface all along. DNA rumors have a different impact since they imply evidence rather than opinion. In the public's perception, a test stands for certainty in a world full of conjecture. The notion alone can undermine trust even in the absence of confirmation, since it suggests that someone was unsure enough to ask for confirmation. Fans started posing awkward queries. What initially led to the choice to test? Was it the result of a conversation? Or was uncertainty quietly building until it demanded clarification? Unanswered, those queries sparked countless speculations on social media. Yandy's supporters promptly retaliated, reminding everyone that rumors frequently misrepresent the truth. They contended that simply talking about a DNA test in public goes too far, and that loyalty does not negate the right to privacy. Many stressed that when strong women no longer conform to comfortable conventions, they are frequently the focus of betrayal narratives. They saw this story less as fact and more as an attempt to discredit a mother who has continuously supported her family during public upheavals. Others adopted a different stance, inquiring rather than accusing. They contended that doubt doesn't just appear They highlighted the tremendous strain that both couples have experienced and proposed that, even in committed partnerships, stress, distance, and previous disagreements can gradually destroy trust. According to such viewpoint, the rumor was not evidence of misconduct, it was a sign of stress, an indication that something had been neglected long enough to raise suspicions. The silence on both sides, as the tale spread, was what made everything more intense. The discussion was not immediately anchored by any clarification. Fans filled the void with their own reasoning in the absence of that anchor, making connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Previous interviews were trimmed, arguments from the past were repeated, once ignored comments were interpreted as foreshadowing. The internet has a way of transforming hindsight into proof, particularly when a rumor implies scientific validation. Because of what Yandy stands for to many people, the concept of betrayal struck a profound emotional chord. She represents perseverance, sacrifice, and supporting family in the face of hardship. The rumor felt nearly personal to people who loved that image. Like witnessing a belief fall apart, others who were constantly uncomfortable with how much she carried by herself were reassured by the story that imbalance might gradually erode trust. Both interpretations explain why the reaction was so strong, but they indicate more about audience expectations than about the couple themselves. The discussion was further complicated by Mendeecees' alleged response. After the purported test, he reportedly eventually spoke up out of hurt rather than anger because he was taken aback by the consequences he had not anticipated. Whether overdone or misinterpreted, that framing caused some viewers to feel more sympathetic towards him since they started to perceive him as someone facing doubt rather than making direct accusations. Once more, perception performed the majority of the work in the absence of proof. The story shifted from the test itself to the frailty of trust as the rumor spread. Fans argued over whether relationships can withstand skepticism once it gets to the point when evidence is required. While some maintained that the act of seeking clarification alone indicates a fracture that is difficult to Mendeecees, others countered that it might be an act of responsibility, even though there were few facts. Those discussions kept the narrative alive. The current state of affairs is a precarious middle ground. No official confirmation has been made. However, many people's perceptions of the connection have already changed as a result of the concept. When it comes to identification, loyalty, and proof, that is the power of rumor. The public has already been forced to confront issues of trust, privacy, and how quickly belief may give way to skepticism when silence meets conjecture. Regardless of whether this tale dies quietly or calls for answers later, the emotional consequences developed at a rate that neither side could control as the rumor made its way from fan pages into popular discourse. The change in tone surrounding Yandy Smith was the first thing that people noticed. Her online persona became conspicuously more circumspect and less theatrical, as though she was carefully considering each step. Supporters perceived this as a response from someone defending her family and tranquilly. It seemed like evasion to skeptics. The internet started changing the narrative in real time based on that divergent perception. Silence isn't neutral in situations like this. It turns into a blank canvas that people fill with whatever hues their prejudice gives them. In the meantime, rumors about Mendeecees Harris grew more intense. He was reportedly battling astonishment, hurt, and disbelief in private. Fans' interpretations of these feelings varied greatly. Some thought the story exaggerated his response to create a more dramatic storyline, while others saw a guy at last facing doubts he'd carried in silence. Every purported detail, including how he felt, what he said, and whether he confronted Yandy, was sifted through second-hand accounts that became more conclusive with every repost because there was no verified statement. The debate continued despite the lack of clarity. It quickened it. Online outrage followed a well-known pattern as the rumor spread. Polarized opinions abound in the comment areas. Each side was certain they were protecting the truth. Yandy's supporters contended that stories about DNA tests are frequently used as weapons to discredit strong, independent women. They underlined how easily popular adulation may turn into distrust, particularly when a woman's power no longer fits into a narrative that is comfortable. For them, the rumor had nothing to do with proof. In a setting where vulnerability is frequently required as evidence of genuineness, it was about penalizing a woman for being strong. Some adopted a more critical stance, criticizing transparency rather than admitting culpability. They contended that the relationship itself becomes the narrative when trust erodes to the point of uncertainty, instead of betrayal. The purported test represented unsolved questions for some viewers. They argued over whether pursuing certainty is intrinsically immoral or if it represents deeper fissures that require care. This viewpoint reframed the event as a relational reckoning rather than a character attack. Although it did not directly charge Yandy, the speed at which previous footage reappeared was what really changed the story overnight. Scenes from previous seasons were cut by fans, who replayed seemingly insignificant moments and reinterpreted them as foreshadowing. A pause in discourse started to be seen as an indication of secrecy. A tight gaze turned suspicious. Years-old words were reinterpreted as hints. The power of this retroactive storytelling lies in its sense of exploration. Once those clips went viral, opinions solidified, even if it was based on selective recollection. Individuals were no longer responding to the present. They were responding to a history that had been recreated. The shift was enhanced via reaction channels. The rumor was presented as a revelation in the titles, even if a lack of confirmation was acknowledged by disclaimers. Instead of slowing involvement, that contradiction increased it. Evidence started to lose ground to commentary as viewers clicked to watch interpretations rather than facts. Careful wording was replaced by emotive language, and the rumor quickly gained traction just by being talked about everywhere. Online consensus is formed in this way. Repetition fosters familiarity, which in turn fosters belief. The pushback also revealed the various ways in which viewers interpret uncertainty. Some urged statements be made right away, claiming that openness would put a stop to rumors. Others said that privacy should be respected and cautioned against hurrying to explain things. Both parties were stuck in a no-win scenario due to these divergent expectations. Speaking ran the chance of being misunderstood, and being silent ran the risk of losing the story. The loudest voices, not the most accurate ones, were bolstered by each hour of uncertainty. The event resonated emotionally because it dealt with issues that many people are familiar with: fear of being misinterpreted, uncertainty, and trust. Reactions were heightened when viewers placed their personal experiences onto the narrative. Yandy was shielded by those who have encountered misconceptions. Mendeecees were sympathetic to anyone who had encountered relationship uncertainty. This projection ensured the story's durability by turning famous rumors into private discussions. The discussion shifted from shock to analysis as the days went by. Instead of focusing on the veracity of the rumor, fans started questioning what it showed about public relationships. They talked about how privacy erodes under continual scrutiny and how fame amplifies doubt. The notion that one unproven assertion could change people's perceptions became a talking point in and of itself. People questioned why prominent leaders are expected to be definite when ambiguity is rarely accepted. Many conjectured that, in the hopes that the storm would pass, both sides were opting for moderation over retaliation behind closed doors. However, the internet was able to finalize its own account of events thanks to this restriction. A story doesn't go away gently once it has established itself. It lingers, waiting to reappear with the next clue or headline. The purported DNA test lost significance in favor of what it represented: a break between one's private and public identities. The narrative had changed at the end of this stage. It was no longer merely a rumor. It was about the speed at which beliefs change when silence gives way to conjecture. The story of the romance was altered by fans, assigning motivations, results, and emotional truths without verification overnight. Whether true or not, those revised stories were incorporated into the couple's cultural memory. Long, awkward talks reportedly occurred. According to insiders, discussions are not intended for headlines or sound bites. These were slow, challenging conversations about perception, trust, and how easy doubt can slip in when pressure never ceases, rather than fights driven by rage, whether overstated or misinterpreted. The purported DNA test story compelled a more thorough examination of communication and limits. It brought up issues that are beyond the scope of a single statement. After skepticism has been raised, how can confidence be restored? When the world demands explanations that a family may never be entitled to, how can you protect them? The realization that even quiet had evolved into a tactic, requiring careful consideration, was one of the most difficult parts. Speaking risked validating a rumor. Sitting quiet risked allowing it crystallize into accepted truth. Both sides' advisors apparently considered every scenario, understanding that in the internet era, clarity doesn't necessarily eliminate conjecture. It has the ability to restart. Even though it was really unpleasant, this tension made restraint seem important. Choosing not to talk wasn't about hiding. It was about not allowing a story to control how quickly one heals. Simultaneously, efforts were made to quietly change the emphasis. Online behavior, family-focused messages, work updates, and moments of daily life gradually returned to normal. According to viewers, these were signs, not distractions. shows that identity is not defined by conjecture, and that life goes on beyond rumors. Supporters found solace in these times, which served as a reminder that relationships are complicated and never made news. They were deemed inadequate by detractors, which strengthened the notion that there were still unresolved issues. The message was clear in any case: not all conflicts are fought in public. And further layer was added by the industry response. Peers keep a careful eye on situations like this because they know how rapidly reputations can change. Colleagues' quiet chats frequently act as unofficial temperature checks, determining how a story is doing outside of the loudest areas of the internet. There was awareness, even if no one rushed to make public comments. This was a moment that may influence alliances, opportunities, and attitudes in the future. Regaining narrative control is crucial, since judgments in entertainment can be influenced by even unsubstantiated claims. The way this rumor changed the public's perception of the relationship was what made it so powerful. For many years, the narrative was one of perseverance and devotion in the face of hardship. That trajectory was appended by the abrupt appearance of uncertainty, which made fans reevaluate their beliefs. Even those who categorically denied the rumor admitted that the discussion it generated felt more serious than usual gossip. It questioned presumptions about privacy, transparency, and the degree of assurance viewers felt entitled to while following public figures behind closed doors. Establishing new limits was probably part of the process of rebuilding, or at least stabilizing, boundaries with social media, other voices, and even outdated behaviors that, in the face of ongoing examination, were no longer beneficial to the partnership, regardless of public demand. Situations like these frequently force people to choose what they are prepared to disclose and what ought to be kept private. For fans who long for access, that choice may seem like a loss, but it's frequently the only way to maintain authenticity. The rumor's impact persisted even if its strength decreased over the course of several weeks. The topic of instant indignation gave way to long-term effects. The subject of whether trust can ever return to its initial state was discussed. Some claimed that if doubt is addressed honestly and carefully, it can improve relationships. Others thought that once suspicion is introduced, the dynamics are permanently altered. There was more than one pair involved in these discussions. They were a reflection of more general concerns about relationships that were monitored. The biggest shift was gradual but long. The story had changed. This was no longer an ephemeral headline. Fans would use it as a point of reference as fresh details emerged or previously released videos reappeared. That's how stories endure. Unresolved tension, not confirmation. The rumor has already changed how many people perceive the past and look to the future. Even if nothing more is ever spoken in public, rewriting the online narrative was ultimately not the goal of the effort to reclaim control. It was about not allowing it to control reality. That distinction is important. Although public opinion can be strong, it doesn't always accurately reflect reality, even though it may not be apparent to people seeing from the outside. Genuine change occurs during the silent process of processing, establishing boundaries, and deciding what to do next. One fact emerges as the dust settles: whether or not the rumor turns out to be true, moments like these change the terrain. They compel introspection, reevaluation, and occasionally innovation. Additionally, they leave all parties involved at a fork in the road when it comes to explaining the past and influencing the future. Reflection, rather than certainty, is what's left when the noise eventually starts to subside. This moment is driven by rumor, conjecture, and silence have had a profound emotional impact on both the individuals involved and the onlookers. The importance of the DNA test tale stemmed from its representation of how fast trust can be questioned, and how easily public narratives can overcome private reality, regardless of whether it was overstated, misinterpreted, or completely untrue. Doubt alters how every action in the future is perceived, and every moment in the past is recalled once it enters the dialogue. The encounter seems to have highlighted the price of being under continual surveillance for Yandy. Her strength, loyalty, and selflessness, qualities for which she has received praise, suddenly came under examination instead of adoration. After the rumor, her more reserved demeanor seemed to be a conscious decision to safeguard her family and her tranquility rather than engage in a conflict she did not initiate. Many people who recognize that not all accusations warrant an immediate response, particularly when feelings are fresh and the facts are unclear, found resonance in that restraint. The circumstance demonstrated to Mendeecees how uncertainty may become a burden in and of itself.